Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. This is episode number 16. I'm here with Alex Brown, who is a productivity expert, app developer, and process efficiency guy all around. So welcome, Alex. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So go ahead and that's your, that's kind of your basic of who you are, but kind of give me a little bit of idea of your background and kind of what you do and what's going on.
Yeah, so I've actually been working on this project called Daymaster for about 5 years now. It started, I remember actually driving to a family gathering and, having some of these ideas swirl around for a long time and just try to figure out like what goes into life, right?
Yep.
What do we actually do with our time, So that kind of kicked off this long journey of trying to distill life into like this simple, repeatable process. And kind of going from there, I was actually able to continue to develop this application around this process, right? So the process is pretty straightforward, but it hits all the necessary points to help you learn and grow and win every day and live your best life. That's really the idea behind it. So step number one is setting a clear course and direction for your life, right? I mean, it's something, it sounds like, why wouldn't you do that? I don't know how many people actually follow through on that though, right? Like being able to clearly define what it is that what you want, right? And who you are. So starting off with that, setting a clear course. And then number two, breaking that down into smaller pieces and prioritizing. So what out of all these things that you want, right? Because a lot of us want a lot of different things. Right. I might want a new car. I might want a new job. I might want a new spouse or new partner, whatever that is. Being able to prioritize what is the most important thing in your life, right? And turning that into a goal. And then number three, being able to plan and execute, right? Being purposeful and intentional with your time, right? Making sure that your time is going where you want it to. Ultimately, you are the owner of whatever you decide to do. And then the last part of that process is reflection. So as you go through this day-to-day process of setting your goals, trying to win each day, go back and look, how did I do? What lessons can I find? So that was kind of the journey for me of just trying to figure out like, how can I kind of distill this so that anybody can follow those simple steps and win every day and live their best life. So that's kind of like the process idea, right? That's kind of my idea for how anybody can just implement that simple, repeatable process to do just that. Now, for me personally, the journey is kind of up and down as it is for everybody.
Right.
I've gone through some difficult times, even trying to build this process. My wife struggled with some hard times and just trying to be there. I used my application to help kind of reflect on that journey. That was pretty rough, but we were able to get through the other side with that one. Or discovering my son had autism. That's another just really, that's a gut punch,
Yeah.
And just being able to try to find patience and find the lessons going through that. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun. Practicing gratitude. I know, Kevin, that's something that you like to do,
Yeah.
And
100%.
Yeah. So that's kind of just a high level overview of some of the things that I've gone through.
Well, we can dig in that. Well, let's dig into them a little bit. As far as like your step one, so that's kind of like, it's beyond goal setting, right? Like that's almost
Correct.
like a life mission statement versus just, hey, these are our, the things that I want to accomplish today, next week, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Right. So is that kind of how you would explain what step one is? Maybe let's just kind of walk through in a little bit more detail, if you want to, those 4 things.
Yeah, absolutely. So defining your best life in life coaching, which I'm a life coach, the idea is like the wheel of life, right? So you got all of your different sectors of life, your relationships, your career, your family. And I kind of started with that as like my starting point, but there's an amazing power in just writing things down. The more I've kind of worked through this experiment, the power of your written words is amazing, right? It's a way to reflect your own ideas back to you, right? And you can kind of clarify them and work with them. It's in a lot of the videos that I make for YouTube to try to empower and inspire people. But when you're actually dealing with your best life, right, you start off with the different categories, right? So let's look at like your body and health. If you're feeling good, that's kind of the basis for everything that you do. So you could just ask yourself some really simple questions to help define what it is that you're looking for, or what does your best body and health look like? So for example, how much do you weigh? How much do you sleep? How much water are you drinking? What does your diet look like? How much are you stretching? If you could just answer those 5 or 6 questions, you've actually set a very clear destination. Actually, these are the things that I want, right? And now you can take that and break it down into goals and aspirations to try to make those a reality.
Yeah, like how do you feel, right? Like I met you in person a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And man, we were traveling that weekend. We were only gone. I travel a lot. This year has been less so, but every time I travel, I get about 2 days into it and I'm like, is this what people feel like all the time? Like just this, because it's irregular eating schedules, and it's eating foods that you don't like, for me, that I don't ordinarily eat, or in quantities, or at times, or more sugar or fat, or, eating out, whatever. Absolutely. Those are preservatives and stuff. And I always think to myself, this must be what people that eat, that have this lifestyle, they must feel this way all the time, but don't realize that this isn't a normal feeling. And Absolutely. So like that's got to be a big component of like your overall health is, how do you feel, and is it normal to feel that way?
I mean, great point. Can you imagine like going to McDonald's like 5 days a week? Like I go to McDonald's once, and like, it might taste good, but I'm like, I can feel that just like a couple hours later, it's just like, oh, yikes.
I'm always like, that was a very poor choice.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it just comes down to priorities, right? So figuring out what works for you. I mean, I know you're a big workout guy. You like to hit the weights and, do that. For other people, that might not be, their go-to, right? But finding, simple routines that work, right? Maybe it's just going and walking a mile. Like I did that the other day with my dog, and it's great exercise, clear the mind. Could be something that simple. So
the dog needs it too, by the way.
Yeah. He was very excited. I think he pooped 3 times along the way, which sucked.
Nice. Well, as long as you didn't, we're probably good.
So yeah, like I said, kind of going back, it's just as simple as just asking those couple of questions. Another good one is like your career, right? How much money do you want to make? Where are you working? Who are you working with? What are you doing? If you can just answer those couple of questions, how many hours a week are you working, right? A lot of people don't even think about that. In my best life, I work 40 hours a week. I just wrote that down the other day because I'm like, that's kind of the sweet spot. I can get a lot done in 40 hours, but the more I work, it's going to take away from my family life, my social life, and a lot of the other things that keep me, happy and fulfilled. So,
yeah, and I don't remember. There's some law that they talk about in terms of business and productivity and work environment and all that. But they taught, and I need to look it up. But there's this whole thing where you basically will work to a deadline, and you can, if your frame is 10 hours for a day, you'll fill and work to that 10 hours. If it's 3 hours that day, you will work and fill that 3 hours. And yes, you may have more, you may not get everything done, but that 3 hour time period will be much better spent typically than your typical 8 hour. I don't know what the statistic is, but it's a huge percentage of time people spend on social media or just interacting with other coworkers in a not necessarily a meaningless way, but a way that isn't necessarily helping their job or their company. But
absolutely. I mean, I have a corporate background and meetings, right? I mean, I would have like 7-8 hours of meetings, and your point exactly. If you schedule 30 minutes for a meeting or an hour for a meeting, you're going to fill that hour. Like whether you're just BSing or actually getting stuff done, like you're not being effective because it's like, oh, there's an hour allocated, right? I talk a lot about time boxing, right? Like allocating a specific amount of time for a specific activity. Meetings are just that. It's the same idea, right? I'm allocating an hour for us to get together to accomplish whatever that is. But if we're scheduling an hour, the odds of that going the full hour are like 90%, right? I mean, it's overwhelming. And the chances are you're ready to, jump out the window by the time you're getting to that last hour, But
Yeah, I know Elon Musk is one that he limits his meetings to like 15 minutes or something like that. And like, he'll literally stop a meeting if it just gets like, okay, this is useless. I'm leaving, we're done. So
I've read that in his rules, right? He said, if you show up to a meeting and you're not providing any value, because I've sat in the background on plenty of meetings throughout time, like if you're not adding any value, he says, just leave, get up and leave.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason for you to be there. There's no value.
yeah, I've got stuff to do for sure. So you've got overall life goals, you got health, you got work. What's the next one?
So another one would be like hobbies and recreation, your house and home. Going through my list here, your spiritual life, right? I remember reading on your website, like spirituality is very important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your relationships, your family life, right? So it's just trying to break it into all of those specific sectors and just answering those questions. So you can really just start defining, like, this is like the spaghetti at the wall exercise, right? If I just basically create this giant bucket list of everything that I'm looking to do, it's a great way to just get all your ideas out there, but then you can start like reflecting on it. That's where I preach, write everything down, right? It's a great way to just get your thoughts on paper, and now you can work with them, clarify them, refine them, figure out what's important to you. So that's kind of step one.
Step one's very, very high level, what they call the 60,000 foot view. And then you can kind of whittle down from there. And that's kind of getting into the step two.
Exactly. So now once I have like my overall list, now I can actually take those ideas and break them down further, right? So like those same questions I asked, like how much water am I drinking? That could turn into like a real simple goal. I want to drink my eight glasses of water every day, right? And you can make that into a goal. Or it might be something really large, like I want to be able to squat 300 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that goal is, like it becomes clear and actionable just from defining your best life.
Right, for sure. And so, like when you write these down, and I'm sure the app does this, which we can talk more about, and you feel free to go into this, but when you have these kind of step one goals or step one kind of mission statements, are you trying to kind of just have that all categorized out? And then, so you have kind of like, if you're doing an outline, for example, you kind of, here's the heading and here's what that heading does. And then you've got all these goals and bullet points underneath.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So within the Daymaster application, when you're actually setting a goal, you're choosing which best life category it aligns to, right? And you're also able to prioritize it. So if, for example, I want to work on, getting my ideal weight or squatting the 300 pounds, right? That's going to go towards my body and health. If I want to spend more time with my family, that's going to go to my family time. So it's really a great way to reflect and prioritize as well. You know what I mean? You got to figure out what's really important to me and where is my time going, and being intentional with your time. That's really what it boils down to. So for the goal setting process, do you want me to jump into that a little
Absolutely,
bit?
Dude. It's your show, man. Talk as much as you want about whatever you want.
All right. So I think there's 4 steps to setting a good goal. There's the what, the why, the when, and the how. And the application goes through those specific steps. But if you actually go through those steps, you're actually able to make like a repeatable statement from your goal, which I think is so cool, because that's something I do every morning is read your goals aloud, right? Keep those fresh in your mind as to what you're working on, some of those bigger rocks you're trying to move forward. So the cliche thing is like the SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-oriented. So that's kind of incorporating some of those ideas. So what is it that you want, right? It has to be specific, measurable, and it should be attainable, right? You don't want to set yourself up for failure by saying, I'm going to squat 1,000 pounds tomorrow when I can't even squat 100 pounds right now. That doesn't. Yeah,
I'm gonna beat Eddie Hall's deadlift record of 1,352 pounds or whatever that deadlift record is that he has, right?
Yeah. So having a clear what, right? Making sure you know exactly what it is, and the bigger the goals get, the easier it is to kind of like not be able to clearly identify what you want. So like when I'm trying to build an application, that gets really ambiguous. It gets much harder to define what that is. So also continuing to like refine it as you go along. You kind of start with maybe one statement and you add more, take it away until you can keep refining it and get it to exactly what you want to be. That's the what.
Yeah.
The why. The why is just as important, right? Those are the benefits that you're going to get from accomplishing your goal, right? So for example, if I want to attain that ideal weight, right? I want to lose 20 pounds. Weight loss is probably the most common goal out there. Why do you want to lose 20 pounds? Usually there's a few common benefits that you're going to receive, right? I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to look good for my spouse. And if you can identify those are like That's your benefit statement. That's why I'm doing it, right? Breaking it down, writing it down.
And making it personal for yourself. I mean, I don't think a lot of people set out to lose 20 pounds. They're like, I would like to lower my percentage risk of cardiovascular event by 22%. Like that's, there may be some super nerd out there that would do that, but it's got to be something like, I want to be there. I'm 200 pounds overweight and I know I'm not going to, and my daughter's 8 years old. Like I want to be able to walk her down the aisle in 12 years, which I'm not going to be able to and carry 200 extra pounds.
Yeah. So like you exactly put it, right? Making it meaningful for you, right? Don't go accomplish a goal just to accomplish a goal. Make sure it's doing something for you, right? Find the reason. Actually defining your why can also help you like cut the fat. Like if you're going to take on something that's going to be taking up all your time and energy and the value is not going to be there, throw it on the pile, like get rid of it, throw it on the burn pile, move on, go to the next thing that's actually going to provide you value. So a great way to just kind of reflect on that, make sure that you're getting the value that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's that ROI component, right? Like everything I try to do in life, business or otherwise is always, what's the ROI on this? And you can't get super data oriented, but there's a lifestyle ROI. There's a happiness ROI, relational ROI or however you want to put it. But it's like you said, it's what benefit am I going to get from doing this? Because if you're like, oh, I just want to be rich, and I'm like, well, what do you want your family to look like? What do you want, what do you want your health to look like? Well, oh yeah, I forgot about those things.
Well, and I mean, that's like such a great example because like burnout is a real thing. And how many people are just throwing 80-90% of their time and energy to work and business at the cost of everything else? You know what I mean? You might be a kick-ass business person, but if you don't know your family and like your home life sucks or your health sucks, I mean, is that a nice, fulfilling life? I mean, that doesn't sound like that to me.
No, there was, I always try to ask that question when I meet someone that's successful, because especially if they're braggadocious about it, that I have this, I made 7 figures last year. Well, I'm like, well, okay. So, what, are you married? Well, no, I've been divorced 3 times. Well, do you have children? Yeah. Well, I do have 2 kids, but the last time I talked to them was 6 years ago. And I'm like, I'd gladly trade, one of those 7 figures for having an actual relationship that's fulfilling. Billy Ray Cyrus had this, this is old school stuff, but there was a song, I'm fairly certain it was Billy Ray Cyrus, but it was part of the song was, no one ever said, at the end of their days, that I wish I'd spent more time at work.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think there's like 5 or 6 analogies on that. Like work is like one piece, and that's where like people kind of just naturally gravitate to. It's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. But I said, just being able to write down and clarify those couple ideas. How many hours a week do you want to work? Like just being able to answer that question and find the balance, right? And work through it and just figure out what works for you.
Yeah. And you can take, there's 168 hours to work from, right? So like, exactly. How much sleep do you need to feel healthy? Because everybody needs a little bit of a different amount. My wife's more of like a 9 hour a day, 9 hour a night. She's kind of geared towards that. I'm honestly like 6.5. That's just how I'm kind of wired, which the experts would say is not healthy. But if I don't have any caffeine, if I don't do anything and I just sleep without an alarm, I'll wake up at 6.5 hours, maybe 7 on the occasion. And then you can, break down from that, what is I know you're big on family dinners. And so you can, you take all those. And so if you kind of break that down, you can easily say this is an achievable number of hours to be at work and still attain some of the other things I need to do. Absolutely.
And going back to like the sleep, like any routine, whatever it is you're targeting, it's all based around you, right? Like, so we all get caught up sometimes like, oh, this celebrity does this or this Elon Musk does that, I'm going to do that too. It really boils down to, are your routines providing value? Like you said, how much sleep do you need? For me, I'm always like 7.5, 8. Like that's where I'm functioning my best. If I don't get that, I can feel it. I'm not going to be quite as sharp. I'm going to be a little bit slower. But figure out what works for you. That's absolutely important.
Yeah. So we're setting goals. You've gone through you did the why, and is there a how?
Why? Yep. And then you get to the when, right? So having that clear target date in mind, or deadline, when do I want to accomplish this by? One of the things in the Daymaster app, you actually get a estimate, right? So how many hours do I think this is going to take? We were joking about this when we were talking a couple of weeks ago. Estimates always suck. We always underestimate how long something will take. I do that all the time, right? I always project I can get more done than I actually can. But having that date creates urgency and accountability to be able to, strive to that, to try to fit your plan and make sure that you're able to fit everything in that time frame. And if anything, even if you have to move your date back, which isn't ideal, you're still moving forward. That's the key part. So having that clear when is absolutely important. And then the final part is the how. So this is where I think planning and having an idea of both the approach and then allocating the time are so critical. So for the approach, right, when we say, hey, I want to be able to lose 20 pounds, are you going to walk? Are you going to run? Are you going to swim? Are you going to diet? Are you going to do a combination of those things? So like kind of thinking through the strategy behind how you want to reach that goal. And then the critical part is actually allocating time to that goal. I'm a believer in time boxing. That's what the Daymaster application is all about. So when are you actually going to allocate the time to reach that goal, right? And that might be as simple as I'm going to walk for 1 hour a day for the, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the next 4 months, right? And I think that'll fit into this kind of what, why, when formula. It might be I'm going to, lift weights 3 times a week. And if you can actually set that up either the day before or ideally the week before, you're actually setting yourself up for success and you're making your decisions in advance, being able to just say, hey, I need to show up here at 5 and work out. That's what it boils down to. Now, there's no guarantee you'll be able to follow through on it at Tuesday at 5 if you had the most brutal day ever at work and, you got in a car accident or whatever else. Life happens. You can't avoid that. But just planning that decision in advance makes it so much easier to follow through on it. And the more you do that, the more you'll be able to be disciplined and actually follow through on that for everything that you want to do.
Yeah, and developing those habits. Like I typically don't put my workouts in my calendar. However, they're in my internal calendar. So I get up every morning. I do pretty much the same routine every morning, and which you can find at morning.max.man.com. There's a there's my little plug. But I kind of do the same routine every morning, and then I do cardio as part of that. And it's more kind of to get my mind going and get my body flowing and all that. There's not, it's pretty simple. But then I know at about 3:30, usually about 4 p.m. is when I go do a little bit more cardio and then I hit weights. And I kind of just almost subconsciously engineer my workflow that afternoon that I'm kind of coming to an end at that time. But sometimes it's 4:30, it could be 5. Some nights it's 6:30. But I know at some point like that, even if that time shifts, then I know that that's a habit that I just do. I work out like 6 days a week. So it's just something that I do every single day. So having that in your calendar helps to develop those habits and continue to do that, not only for the 12 weeks you're setting that goal, but then kind of as a, for a lifetime, as a lifestyle.
Absolutely. And usually when you're dealing with a goal, right, this is something you either have never done before or maybe are trying to get better at. So like usually the habits and routines don't really exist around what, you're taking on a business venture or an exercise goal or a family goal. It's something you're not doing. So there's a challenge in getting your mind and your body aligned to start doing that activity. For something like you described, like your workout, I do a lot of the same things. I don't necessarily plan my workouts, but it's become such an ingrained behavior that, hey, I'm going to take a 30-minute break and I know I need to get moving. I'm going to go for a run, right? And I'm just going to knock out a mile real quick. So giving yourself some freedom, right? You don't want to be a tyrant with your time either. You want to, you want to find what works for you. So making sure that you're specifically scheduling the time where you want to allocate that to your goals or anything you have to do, right? I got to get my kids from school. I got to go to work. I got to do those things. Those are kind of non-negotiables, but then giving yourself a little bit of flexibility around the edges, I think is really important. But I'm going to say it one more time, make it work for you. It's all about you. So.
Yeah. And do your time boxing. Can you kind of, can you go into a little bit, since we're in this little section about time boxing, how that works and kind of what you do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this kind of takes us into like step 3, right? So step 1, kind of setting that overall course. Step 2, finding some identifiable goals and adding that what, when, why, how logic to them. Now it's time to like start executing each and every day. A famous quote is, live like you're dying. And you know what I mean? That I think that adds a lot of stress. It's like, it's not like the greatest mindset to have. It's like, oh my God, it's all coming to an end. So I would kind of look at it or change that perspective just a little bit to say, try to make every day count. Make it valuable, do something with it, make use of your time. So time boxing is just the simple idea of I'm going to work on something for an allocated amount of time. For example, I'm going to go clean my garage for an hour, right? I'm going to work on that for an hour. I think the key part is adding specific start time and end time, just so you know exactly when you're going to do it. I'm going to go clean my garage from 3 to 4 today. And if you actually develop those time boxes, you can actually kind of lay out your entire day with kind of a rough outline. You could be as specific as you want, right? Some people love like just nitty gritty detail. Others, just kind of want to go more, hey, I want to have a rough draft, rough outline that I can follow. But having kind of these dedicated time boxes to this is what I'm going to work on for these couple hours or this 15 minutes or these 30 minutes, whatever, you can actually lay out your entire day like that. And by planning your day in advance with those couple things that you want to get done, it just leads to purposeful living. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm not reacting to, how I'm feeling in the moment. I've actually thought about it, and this is what I'm going to try to accomplish.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm kind of I run a bunch of different businesses, and so I've got, I always have more things to do than I can actually accomplish in a same period of time. But like on a day like today, where I had a meeting first thing, I'm recording. Actually, I've got 3 podcasts to record today. And then I've got some other stuff going on. But like I find that like that time in between podcasts, for example, whether it's an hour or 30 minutes or whatever, that I can actually be more productive in that hour because it's allocated. I can say, okay, between podcasts, I've got to do this, this, and this, and I've got this amount of time. Then I can actually accomplish those things probably better than if I didn't have a podcast coming up after that. Yeah. Because just have an open-ended, hey, I need to get XYZ done for the rest of the afternoon. Then I dick off or whatever. I may waste more time. So it's almost in my case, like an intentional time boxing, kind of, or forced time boxing because it's an actual schedule that I have to keep.
Yeah. And just like being intentional, right? Like for me, one of the challenges is always like, here's a great example. Like one of the goals that I was working on, like I looked at it, it's actually 2 goals in one. I'm trying to get more clients for my life coach business, and I'm trying to develop my product offerings. And that's like bunched into one goal. And it's just kind of a great example. Well, why is that one thing? That's actually 2 things. Separate them out. Had another example like that with one of the clients that I was working with. He said, I want to get my degree and I want to get this job. And it was bunched together. It's like, no, separate it out. It's 2 things, right? So that same idea holds true even for just like your daily time boxes, right? If you can be as specific and clear about what you want to accomplish with that window of time or where you're spending it, that's huge because in today's world, everybody is ready to chase the butterfly at any given moment. You know what I mean? The attention span is so short, and I fall victim to it consistently, right? But you fight against it. And as long as you can be specific and try to build that discipline, maintain that discipline, you'll just be much more effective with your time.
Yeah, I love, that's funny. I like that idea of chasing the butterfly, or, that's that squirrel thing, or chasing the butterfly, just getting distracted. And there's some, I know as far as like social media goes and stuff, they have tools that you can use to kind of shut off those things during the day and different things like that. So that's time boxing. So do you have a recommended amount of time or kind of whatever that task might take, or do you have a limited amount of time? What do you normally recommend there?
So I'll say it again. I think it's up to the individual. I mean, usually for me, it's like 30 or 45 minutes. If I can have one specific thing I want to accomplish in that 30 or 45 minutes, that's where I find that I'm most effective. I think if you're trying to just like create an outline for your day, you can also create like bigger time boxes, but then you just got to understand that that's probably going to break down into smaller steps. For example, like, hey, I got this big project I need to work on. I'm going to allocate 4 hours, in the morning to development. And then as I'm going through that, I'll continue to break that down. That's another approach that you can take. But it's all about how long you can work. And I think the average person can only work about 90 minutes before they really need a break and a mental refresh. So I would say somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes is probably the sweet spot. But figure out what works for you. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's 45 minutes. Just keep testing and refining. That's part of the process.
Yeah. And I think our brain, just because of the way the clocks work, and how we do that, it seems like that 15-minute increment seems to be something that makes a lot of sense. It's like, I'm going to allocate 37 minutes to this. Well, that's,
yeah.
that would just be weird. So that, that 30 to 45 to an hour or whatever, it probably makes more sense to do that. So what else in step 3?
So being able to plan and execute, right? So being able to plan in advance. I'm a big believer of, the old analogy, lay out your clothes the night before so that you can just put them on the next day. Like planning your day like that. For me, I actually try to plan my whole week in advance. And, not to the nitty gritty details, but I want to have an idea what it looks like. It gets my mind going in that direction as to like what I'm going to do. And it just makes it a lot easier because then I just got to go execute, right? I've made all of my decisions in advance. But at a minimum, try to just lay out what you're going to do the night before. Review your plan in the morning, make that part of your morning routine. Make sure that you're always reading your goals every day. And then at the end of the day, reflect, right? That's step number 4 is how did I do? And I think this is where you're going to find so much value. And I found it personally as I've gone through this process. So about an hour before bed, I actually just did a video on this before we got on here about morning and evening routines. But an hour before bed that's like the kickoff time, right? Start the wind down for your day. Put your device away, right? So usually I'll do my reflection. I'll journal. I'll just do the Google text to speech. What happened today? I'll just talk it. It's very raw. It's just off the cuff. I'm just speaking all the high points, the low points of what happened during the day. And then in the app, there's the question, did you win today? And it's just kind of a summary question. Did you win the day? And if you set out to do what you intended to do, that's a win. It can be that simple. So having that reflection time at the end of the day, but then I think it's even more important to go further and reflect on your week and reflect on your month. And that's where you can really start to see trends forming and a lot of lessons forming too. Because I feel like for me personally, like, it's like once maybe every week or two, it's like you kind of have that aha moment on whatever it is in life. Like, oh, I found this new part of my golf swing, or I found this new workout technique, or I found whatever. And it's like being able to identify those from your journals is absolutely huge. So being able to like teach yourself is really what it boils down to. You're just capturing a bunch of information, you're going and reviewing it, and you can find those lessons along the way, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. And the last time we talked about kind of making sure that your goal list is not just a have to list, that's kind of my thing is, and you almost want to set yourself up, not in an artificial, and you can agree or disagree, but not in necessarily an artificial way to where it's like, sort through my 3 pieces of mail, right? Like, so I have a win later. Like that's a little bit, but like it seems like for me, giving myself an opportunity for wins through that day is something that helps keep me motivated and positive versus like, rewrite the Constitution in Hebrew, like there's things that I can put on my list that are just fairly unsurmountable. And I'm always going to feel like that I didn't win at that. Yeah. And so when I do kind of my end of the day reflection, kind of looking back at that and really being in a mindset of gratitude, like we talked about,
yes,
and being able to be grateful for what you did accomplish and what you did win, right? Is that something that you think is pretty important?
Oh, absolutely. And to your point, like if you have that have to do list, like these are things I want to get done. Like there's only so much time in the day. So like if I think we went through this example in our last discussion, right? Let's say you got the 3 things you want to get done. The first one is the most important, and you wanted to get that done by like 10 in the morning, and it ends up turning into this nightmare, and it takes 5 hours to get done. That's where you don't want to like set yourself up for failure. Like, oh man, this just totally tore through my plans for the day, and now I'm not successful. I think that really goes back to that idea of time boxing, right? So it's like, where are you actually allocating your time? And as long as you're allocating your time where you're supposed to, that's the idea behind the kind of the Daymaster process. Is I'm allocating my time here. Now, granted, there are certain things that you have to get done, but then just adjust your plan on the fly. Like, hey, this is taking me like way longer than I'm planning. I'm probably going to have to shift some other stuff out so I can make, another hour or two window just to get this thing done, because this has to get done today. So give yourself some flexibility, but just making sure that you're very intentional with your time, that it's going where you want it to.
Yeah. And so what are some of the things that you do personally, because you're, obviously, and, like you said, you're not perfect with your productivity and your time and efficiency and
Never
all that.
will
But
be.
what are some of the things that you kind of have on your list of the things that you like? I do these every day and it has this impact on my life ROI, as I'll call it. But like, what are some of those things that you do? I think we talked a little bit about this when you and I met before.
Yeah. So I think the day always starts off with a morning routine, right? So a morning routine is just the most fantastic way to set the tone, build the momentum, find some high value activities. My morning routine involves usually some meditation. Like when I wake up, I don't want to go. Like I kind of need like some wake up time. So I like to sit for 15 minutes, just clear my mind, kind of wake up for a few minutes, practice some gratitude at that point as well. And then I usually do a light workout routine. So a little Qigong. It's like this Tai Chi type activity. I've just picked that up along the way. It fit in the routine, and it's like just a nice 6-minute routine to kind of get loose for the day.
Great for flexibility, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then usually it's like 8 minutes of reading. So usually it's like maybe one chapter, if it's a short chapter, or a few pages of usually something inspirational. Right now I'm reading Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Fantastic book.
Which that was written, what year was that? That was like in
1920 or something like that.
Like a 100-year-old book, and it is still probably one of the most popular business related books there is.
So usually a few minutes of reading, and then the last thing I do to wrap up the routine is I'll go through those big rocks, right? What are my active goals? I'll read them aloud, right? And when I talked about before, like being able to put it into a simple format, if you follow that what, why, when, how format, your goals will turn into like kind of like an affirmation or statement that you can read. I will what by when so that I why, right? This is what I'm doing. This is when I need to do it by, and this is the benefits that I'll receive. So the Daymaster app just turns that right into just a repeatable statement that you can read aloud, and then take a look at the plan for the day, right? Tweak it as needed. Like I said, usually I'm doing my plan the week before just to lay it all out. I might need a few tweaks here or there, but what am I going to accomplish? It gets the mind going in the right direction. And then you just go execute. One of the things that I read too, because I wasn't sure, I had an assumption, but I was able to confirm it, is most people are most productive like late morning, early afternoon, and it has to do with circadian rhythms. So you would just want to make sure that like that's when you're hitting the ground running. You know what I mean? So you do your morning routine, even if that's a little bit earlier, like you're getting yourself set up for success to really make that time count. I'll caveat it again, once again, make sure that it works for you. Some people work best at night. If your routine is at night, great. Make it work for you. So I think the morning routine is huge. And then you kind of have the meat of the day, right? Being able to execute on your goals and aspirations, your work day, and whatever else you got to get done, making sure that you're really hitting the road running with all of those things that you want to get done. Then I think you kind of have the window after your work, right? So if you work 16 hours, you're going to be feeling the burn at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So being clear about when you want your work day to end, and then like your kind of your family time, your hobby time, right? I'm gonna go watch TV for a few minutes. I'm gonna go on social media. I'm gonna do those things that are really relaxing. I'm doing those after work, and then the last part is the wind down, right? So the evening routine is almost as important as the morning routine. So turn off your device that hour before bed, reflect on your day, and then find some calming activities like reading, stretching, qigong, whatever it might be.
And so like, as far as one of the things I suck at is relaxing. I'm just built in a way that, I'm highly productive, but then I have a hard time not being productive.
I totally understand that.
And so like I'll have a Saturday where I'll friggin' build, I'll wire half of my shop. And then if I relax at the end, in the afternoon, I feel like I should still be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you actually kind of time box the relaxation part of your life?
So great question. For me, I leave the post work time open, right? So
Okay.
it's kind of like I don't want to plan everything out 24 hours a day because I feel like that's a little too much order. So I just kind of leave that open ended. I do have a time box for my evening routine and for my bedtime, right? So this is how long I want to sleep. This is like the wind down time, but then I'll leave the other times open. But I've just found it powerful just to write down like I'm intending to rest and relax. And I know that sounds crazy, but like that is an option. That's one of the customs types in Daymaster is really rest and relax because
Okay.
you actually need to allocate it. And by writing it down, it should help, right? If anything,
Right.
it's just a habit that you have to build to be able to say, okay, I'm actually not going to do anything. And I totally understand where you're coming from because I struggle with that. One of my core values is balance because without balance, I just go and go and go and go and there's no breaks,
Yeah.
and then usually I feel the burn and it doesn't end up working out very well for me. So just being very intentional about where that time is going.
Yeah. And it's funny because people that are task oriented like us are, very driven and utilitarian. It's almost like if you put it on your schedule, even a little bit loosely, then it becomes like, hey, that's something that I quote unquote have to do, but it's actually relaxing. And so it's like this, you can almost trick your overworking type mind and desires a little bit to do that. And you're a family dinner guy, right? Is that something you?
Yeah. And that's another thing, like being able to write that down. So usually I'm trying to have, one sit down with the family at least once a week, ideally 2 times. Put all the devices away, turn the TV off. Let's have some time together. My kids might complain about it, like, Dad, why do we have to do this? I'm playing a game or whatever. But yeah, making sure that you have that time. Just another thing that you can time box. I just can't stress that enough. That just writing something down as simple as I want to have family dinner at 4:45 to 5:15 on Monday is that simple, right? You do that and then you can follow through on it. You have your plan in place and you can just go execute.
Yeah. So obviously it's funny because I think I do a lot of the things that you're suggesting already, but I don't do them as formally. I kind of wake up and drink water right away. And I have a little bit of, I basically say, thank you, little time of gratitude and kind of think through my day. And then I kind of do the rest of my routine. And I meditate when I do cold plunge.
Yep.
And, basically just to try to get through it because it sucks. But and then I use time when I'm doing the sauna and when I'm doing my cardio and all that for different productivity stuff or learning. So I kind of integrate that into some of my other things. But I definitely I think it'd probably be easier if I had an app. So I'll be looking forward to the release of this thing and getting on there and taking a look at that for sure. So I'd like to shift gears just a little bit. If
Sure.
anything else that you want to talk about as far as like the productivity and efficiency, just before we leave that, because I want to talk a little bit different stuff.
Sure. So I think one more thing that's really, really important is kind of defining your best life, is defining who you are as well. So being able to define your mission statement, your core values, your beliefs, your rules, that's all incorporated into the Daymaster application. That same idea of just being able to write everything down so you can kind of work through that. It's just a great way to identify who you are and the approach that you're going to take to your life. So I found tremendous value in being able to write all those things down and just continue to work with them and refine them, right? The idea of like your best life or your character, like you're always evolving. You know what I mean? Once you hit one goalpost, there's always another one behind it. So it's kind of this idea of endless growth, right? I'm always going to, I set out to do what I accomplish. When I get there, I'm going to see a whole nother, another hill to climb right after that. So being able to just continue to do that process, right? The same thing over and over again. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, we're all here just for a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? With how fast life goes. You wake up, I was making a glass of tea before bed the other day and I'm like, Megan, which is my wife, like, when do we get these cups? She's like, that was 10 years ago already. And it's like, it's like those little stupid things that's like, oh my God, it has been 10 years. So really just understanding that time is your most valuable resource. So as long as you're being intentional with it, living purposefully, that's really the whole idea and purpose and the concept behind, how do I win every day? And it's just making sure my time is counting. And it looks different to different people. You decide what your priorities are, but
well, and they'll change over time,
absolutely,
right? Because
yeah.
I mean, you're quite a bit younger than I am, and I think my probably since I was your age, my priorities and goals and core value, not necessarily core values, but like the most important things to me at that time have changed probably 5 or 6 times, and so because I'm 50 now. And I'm sure they'll continue to adapt and change after that. I was just thinking about in terms of like, from a financial success standpoint, they always talk about having a budget, right? Like that's, you have to have, and Dave Ramsey's a big one that talks about this and, where you have, a specific line item budget for everything. Well, if you think of your time and your day and your life like that, you really, it makes the same sense. I would think because you're budgeting your time, and what's funny is that $1 million, over your lifetime or over however long it takes you to make that you've budgeted out is way less valuable than the million seconds or however many seconds you've had on Earth, right?
Yeah, I mean, well said, right? I mean, like your time is your most valuable. Your time is your most valuable resource, and your actions always speak much louder than your words. So what you do with the time that you got is really what it boils down to at the end of the day. One of my favorite stories is Les Brown. He's like a motivational speaker. He's like, imagine you're on your deathbed and surrounding you are all these ideas that you had, the dreams that you never pursued. And that's something that just always resonated with me. Like, yeah, what if I get there and I'm just not happy? Like, what if there's regret? You can't ever go backwards. You can only go forward. So that's something that's like, okay, I know I need to, start getting more aggressive. I need to define what I want. And that's kind of kicked off the entire journey. But yeah, just being able to look back and kind of reflect on the whole thing too. I think that's like my long-term vision for the process and the application is if I can go back 20 years from now or 30 years from now and actually look at all the people that I've touched, all of the things that I accomplished, all the lessons that I've learned. I mean, I think that's going to be huge. And even if you could give that, like, hey, here's me, like, this is my life. And you can give that to your family or your relatives. Like, you want to know who I was? I have it all written down.
Yeah. Let me, do you want that in an Excel format or CSV or PDF? Which format would you like that in?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's kind of a crazy idea, but something that I've thought about too, as you kind of project out, seeing where that might end up going.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it speaks to our culture too, because like, if you think about, in one of my social media bios, it literally starts with, I'm living my bucket list.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because we've just kind of, since about 2008, we adopted this say yes to life kind of a mentality. So in 2008, we pulled my kids out of school. They were in 5th and 6th grade. I think maybe 4th and 5th, somewhere in that age group. Pulled them out of school, talked to their teachers. They were in public school at that time. We actually homeschooled them not long after that. But, and we did a 34 state trip in our camper. So we actually took 100 days. We did 12,000 miles on the road, and did 34 states. Took them all, we're in Montana. We went to Seattle, down to Northern California because we'd already been in Southern California a bunch, all the way to Orlando, spent some time at Disney World, all the way up to Maine, and then kind of worked our way back. And so that kind of started this, say yes to life kind of thing. And so another example, we have an opportunity that we were asked if we wanted to go on a trip to the Arctic, which is, and basically go drive around Alaska overlanding for 3.5 weeks. And, we were like, yeah, like we said yes, and we didn't even know how it was going to happen, what it was going to cost, what we needed to do to prepare. And, it's been a real blessing because basically it's an amazing trip that's planned. We're going in into July. Into August. So we're doing that. But the point of that is like, I've gotten now at 50, I've checked off so many things that I've wanted to do as my quote unquote bucket list. I have to write new bucket lists.
Yes.
Like, and that to me is like what living in life should be all about, is really not just wishing for things to happen in your life, but to say yes enough that you can make things happen. And I mean, and I acknowledge that, you know, some people are in a situation where they get 2 weeks a year of vacation, you know, or only, you know, which you can work within that framework. I'm fortunate to be self-employed and can take 3.5 weeks and go do content and still make money and, you know, still sell stuff while I'm gone and all of those kind of things. But within whatever context you have, you know, we've wanted to do marathons. So we did marathons. I want to learn how to fly. I'd love to learn how to fly a helicopter, but I kind of downgraded that to just get my pilot's license for aircraft, you know, small aircraft. But all that to say, it's like you having these long-term goals and constantly looking at them and being grateful for them and then breaking that down into these little elements allows you to accomplish stuff so that, you know, whether it's 50 years or 35 years or I interviewed a buddy of mine that's 92 years old.
Yeah.
And still every day doing new things, totally active, not just sitting around waiting to die. He's like, I'm pretty sure this guy will outlive me, even though he's 92 and I'm 50. But no matter how much time you have, right? I think the point is kind of making the most of that time.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head and you said it so awesome, but right? Like just always moving the goalposts forward. And a lot of the times it's just realizing that it's just as simple as a decision. Like I not only am I thinking about it, I'm just going to go do that, right? I'm going to chase my business dream, right? Like that's a decision I made. I'm going to leave my job and I'm just going to go do it. And it's just, that's what it boiled down to, is just that one decision. So one decision can change your life. And then it goes all the way out to, like you said, your best life, your bucket list. It's essentially the same idea. That's going to evolve over time. And you're always moving towards something. You're always moving forward. You're always living intentionally and proactively. That's what it boils down to. A great story to the opposite of that man you just talked about. I used to work at a bank when I was younger. So we'd have like a lot of retirees come in and I'm like, oh, it's a beautiful day. What are you going to do today? And it's like this old woman says, I'm just going to sit inside. You know, it's like, really? Like, come on,
Yep.
It's like 70. We only get so many of those days in Wisconsin. I'm just going to go sit inside. So that's the opposite of, intentional living, making the most of your time, making sure it's going where you want it to, and figuring it out that you do own it. You can make whatever you want happen as long as you can plan it out, think about it, write it down, just execute some real simple steps.
Yeah, and stay fit, right? Stay fit, stay healthy,
absolutely.
so you can enjoy that time. I do have people in my life that are like that woman that you're describing, which is like I've never said this to them, but I think it to myself in my judgmental way, which is what is even the point? You're like in your 70s, you don't do anything. You don't, it's like, I hate travel. I hate going outside. I hate this. I'm like, and you're literally sitting around miserable waiting to die. And then in the meantime, I'm out working in my yard and I can hear my 92-year-old neighbor who lives right, he lives right behind me. He's out cutting firewood for the winter. He's cutting, 60-foot logs with his chainsaw and then making, multiple cords of wood out of it, stacking it himself and all that. And I'm like, that's it right there. Like that's the goal, is to live. I have good genetics. My grandmother lived to be 104 and her mom lived to be 102. And
wow.
So the assumption is that I'm going to live a long time just from my genetics. I'm fairly healthy, but I joke and say, I'm going to die by something falling on me or by me doing something stupid, because, I tend to be a guy that way and just do dumb things that are too risky, but that's okay with me. Like I'm pragmatic about it because I know that if that happens, no one can say about my life that, he really didn't do much, right? Like that's that's not going to be able to be so having, I think a big thing about what you're building and about what you're teaching and life coursing or, life coaching is to really be deliberate with your in living. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important.
Yeah. And that's where I said, just trying to break it down into a simple, repeatable process. Who are you? What do you want out of those things that you want? What are your goals? Prioritize what's number one, and then go work every day and make sure you're allocating 5 or 10 or 15 minutes or an hour or whatever it is to try to make that thing a reality. And then reflect and see how you did. And if you just keep doing that day after day after day, you're going to find the lessons along the way. You're going to reach those goals. They might take a little longer than you're planning on it, but that is really the vehicle to learning and growth and just having that real intentional living. So making the most of your time, right? That's really what it is.
And being able to move, like I kind of do everything expecting to fail. So that's, and I expect wins at the same time, but I mean, not expecting to fail like I'm a loser and I can't do anything, but being ready to adjust and to adapt.
Yeah.
Like for you and your, everything that you teach in the app, I'm sure that, if you need to go back and modify a goal or update the goal or change the goal, that's not a hard thing to do, right? Just like in life.
Yeah. And I mean, that goes back to like the reflection, right? Like you're not always going to be successful. Some of the things that you're going to try are not going to work out, but then you just go back to the list and you say, hey, I tried this. It didn't work out. I'm just going to go to the next thing, and
yep.
It doesn't change. You just go take that same approach and you just keep executing that. Right. And a lot of this, right, this is all very introspective. Like for me, that I'm a very introspective person. It's taught me a whole lot. And I feel like now I'm able to share a lot of these concepts and ideas that I've worked through, but also, making the most of the time for others too, just making sure that, as a dad, like I caught myself the other day, like, you yell at your kids sometimes, like, why are you fighting with me? Why are you doing this? And just being aware, even when you're dealing with others, whether it's at work or your kids or your spouse, just trying to be aware and making sure that you're leaving a good imprint on them as well, right? That, hey, I got to get everything done. Shut up and leave me alone because I got my time boxes and everything else.
Right.
Like there's much more to it than that. So that aspect of, working through it with your family, teaching your kids, sharing the lessons with the others, learning and growing with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, right? That's a huge part of it too.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think a good clarification is that with so much of the goal setting and being driven and time boxing and everything, it's easy to think of that in terms of the utility side of it. And missing that what it really does is just like a budget, right? Like they talk about by having a restrictive quote unquote budget opens up freedom that most people don't realize that they can have.
Yeah.
Because if, for example, if you've budgeted, $100 for whatever during the month for entertainment, right? And you want to go out and eat and that helps you choose, but you have that freedom to spend that money because it's already allocated and in that. And then with your, with the time situation, it's a similar thing. Like you've opened up and reserved these times to live parts of your life in a prioritized way that really can make a huge difference in the freedom that you have in your life. But I love the holistic approach of it because it opens up that freedom. And it's not just let's get it, you didn't name the app Get Shit Done. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's not that's not the point of the whole thing. It's a holistic life. It's a tool for a better life, I think.
Yeah. And that's the tagline is win every day and live your best life. And that's really what it boils down to is being intentional with your time and making sure that it's working for you. I said that 5 times, like do what works for you. For with you being so successful in business and having so much success there, like it's going to look totally different for somebody else. Somebody else might have, a lot of comfort going to the 9 to 5. Like that's where they excel. That's what they're meant to do. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If that's where you feel like you belong and that's where you're adding value and that's where you're finding value, enjoy it, make it, make the most of what you can. And when I was at my corporate job, that's what I did, set out the 3 things I'm going to accomplish today. And one of the coolest things that ever happened to me was when I actually left that job, which I was there for about 11 years.
Oh, wow.
They had this meeting that was like, everybody across like the entire department's like, oh, you touched my life in one way or another. And I'm like, what? Like, when did that happen? I don't remember that happening, but like just that some guy messaged me even during that meeting. He's like, the social currency you built up here is amazing. And I'm just like, I didn't even know I had this impact, It's just crazy. So like having moments like that will just help you kind of reflect and say, wow, like maybe this is, this was a good spot for me for that time, but now I'm ready to tackle the next thing. Yeah. So if you're at the corporate job, people pick up on that, make other people's lives easier, make your boss's life easier, right? And enjoy it. If that's where you want to be, go do it to the best. But if it's not where you want to be, find out where you need to be then and pivot and change course.
Yeah, there's kind of a false altruism out in the world where it's like, make a better place, make the world a better place, and kumbaya and all that kind of stuff. But it's really a matter of making the people that you encounter make their lives just a little bit better than it could be if they hadn't encountered you, right? And I'm not very good at this. I tend to be kind of people can be an obstacle to me, so I have to work. I have to work on that quite a bit to not see people that way. And honestly, this podcast thing has been super good for me for that, because it's allowed me to interact with people that I would ordinarily never interact with. You and I are fairly similar, and kind of in our worlds are very similar. But I had, I'm talking to a doctor from the UK about porn addiction, and it's like, and somebody from Australia about, men's health and, TRT and stuff like that. So it's a whole different, it really opens my mind in order to be able to, be better and try to improve my life through them and try to improve their life through me.
Yeah. And like the way that you just put that, right? I mean, that's like a moment of reflection, right? By doing these things, I found this lesson, that really goes back to that idea of like, reflect, figure out what's working for you, what's not working for you, and enjoy those lessons, write them down, and you can go back to them and keep learning and figure out what's worked in the past and go back to it, and so on and so forth.
That's awesome. I think I love what you're doing. Tell me about, so you're still a little ways out from the full release, right? The launch and all that. And, but people can find you. How do people find you? How do people kind of get ready for this thing coming out, or do life coaching with you, or watch your YouTube videos? Where do we find you?
Yeah. So the website you can find me at is daymaster.net. That has all of the tools. It describes the process. That's where you can book your coaching with me. That's where you can access the application. The application's still a couple weeks out. Kevin, you're not going to believe this. This has taken me a little bit longer than I was anticipating.
Right. Time boxing or not, it sometimes takes longer.
Yeah. So, but we're only a couple weeks away. So that'll be ready to go shortly here, targeting about 3 weeks. 23rd of May is our target date. So we're planning on trying to hit that. I have a lot of content that I've uploaded to YouTube. So I have a bunch of different formats. One of the formats I just started experimenting with that I'll have these videos coming out real soon is 33 seconds to win your day. So just being able to hit people with like a quick tip and try to inspire people, and hey, write something down, take a walk, try to be mindful, try to be intentional, just some real basic stuff. I have like longer form videos too, like that describe that whole goal process, the what, why, when, how, goes into detail. So like you can walk through that and start planning your goals, how to define your best life, some of the questions that you can ask. So a lot of really, really great content on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook as well. So we joked about this last time too. Social media is one of the least productive places you can be, but as a business, it is a critical aspect. So I don't spend a lot of time there. And usually when I do go there, it's like, why am I here? after about 5 or 10 minutes. But
after you've had your soul sucked out through the mouse, through the hand that you touch the mouse with. It's an interesting place. Well, hey, this has been awesome. I appreciate you sharing all this information for us, and I'm definitely going to implement some of the things that you suggest, and then I'll be anxiously awaiting the formal release, whether it's the 23rd, 24th, or 27th, depending on depending on how that goes and when it finishes up. So I appreciate it, Alex. Thanks so much, man.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And I really love the opportunity just to share these ideas. It's really cool. So
awesome. Have a good day.
You too. See ya.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.